Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the PRINCE2 organization theme. I want you to think about managing a complex program kind of like steering a massive high-speed vehicle. If nobody knows who's driving, who's navigating, or who's actually checking the engine, well, you're going to crash, right? We're going to use this framework to treat complex organizational change with the exact precision of a high-performance machine.
But before we map out the solution, let's just ask ourselves, why do so many massive, large-scale investments just fail to get off the ground? Honestly, it usually points straight to undefined responsibilities. People just don't know who actually has the authority to make the big calls. Or worse, literally everyone thinks they're the one holding the steering wheel. If those boundaries of accountability aren't crystal clear from day one, your transformation is basically destined for chaos.
To solve this, we're going to walk through a 5-part framework. We've got the blueprint for our shared purpose, the machinery, which are our governance boards, the drivers holding the roles, the speed limits defining our risk, and finally, the passengers, our stakeholders.
All right, part 1, the blueprint. Let's talk purpose and governance.
So this blueprint is what gives our program its fundamental structure. It clarifies our shared purpose, and most importantly, it dictates exactly who gets to make which decisions. By having a really clear organization, you're leading with purpose, and that builds real, actual commitment from your team. It lets you tackle ambiguity head-on through transparent risk appetites and ensures your governance doesn't drift away from actual operational priorities. Really, it's all about deploying the right skills and getting measurable benefits through constant two-way communication.
Moving on to part 2, the machinery. Let's look at governance boards.
Okay, so these core governance boards are the actual machinery required to control our outcomes. You can't just throw everyone into one giant, chaotic committee. You need specific gears turning in sync. This hierarchy makes sure authority cascades logically. At the very top, step 1, the sponsoring group gives the overall direction and the funding. Right below them in step 2, the program board actually drives the delivery of that strategy. And down in step 3, the program office acts as the engine room. They provide the essential controls, the tools, and the support to keep everything running smoothly. Notice the super strict division of labor we have here. Looking at the primary functions, you absolutely do not want the senior executives up in the sponsoring group getting bogged down in day-to-day capacity controls. I mean, that is exactly what the program office is there for. By completely separating strategic alignment from delivery and support, every single board knows exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And honestly, just as importantly, they know what they shouldn't be interfering with.
And hey, you don't always need to reinvent the wheel here. Take the utilities maintenance example from our sources. When they launched a new program, they didn't waste time creating a brand new committee from scratch. Nope, their permanent, existing infrastructure investment committee literally just put on a different hat and served as the temporary sponsoring group. It's just a highly efficient way to use the structures you already have for temporary program governance.
Which brings us to part 3, the drivers. These are the key individual roles.
To actually steer this thing forward, we need to assign our drivers. These are the folks who hold very distinct, specific accountabilities within those boards we just talked about. The absolute most crucial role to understand, the Senior Responsible Owner, or SRO. This person is the ultimate accountable leader. They chair the program board, they set the vision, and they secure the cash. Even if they delegate all the daily operational heavy lifting to other people, the buck stops entirely with the SRO when it comes to actually delivering the program's outcomes.
Reporting directly to the SRO, we've got the program manager. If the SRO is the person who owns the vehicle, the program manager is kind of your lead mechanic and driver rolled into one. They are deep in the day-to-day leadership. Their job is to ensure all the moving parts, the delivery plans, the budget baselines, the schedules, are flawlessly integrated and functioning correctly without the whole engine overheating.
And then we have the Business Change Manager, or the BCM. This role is absolutely vital. The BCM is the bridge back to business as usual. They represent the daily operations side of the house, making sure the company is actually ready, willing, and able to absorb the massive changes being built, ideally without day-to-day operations completely falling apart in the process.
This actually highlights a boundary that trips up so many organizations. Get this, the program manager builds the new systems, the software, the infrastructure, but the BCM is the one who embeds it. The BCM ensures the staff actually embraces, adopts, and uses those new systems. If your program manager builds an incredibly shiny new tool, but the BCM fails to get anyone to actually log in and use it, well, the program has failed.
Here's a really cool example from the source material about a charity realignment program. They actually brought in an external consultant to act as their BCM. But, an outsider can't force internal change all by themselves. So what do? They successfully drove adoption by utilizing a network of internal staff change champions. These internal champions acted as the critical eyes and ears on the ground, helping that external BCM navigate the organization's really unique internal culture.
All right, part 4, the speed limits. Let's talk about defining risk appetite.
Every fast-moving vehicle needs strict parameters, and in a program, that's your risk appetite. This is the exact amount of risk your organization is willing to swallow to achieve its goals. Best practice dictates that you absolutely cannot use vague, flowery statements here. Saying we are risk-averse literally means nothing. Risk appetite has to be expressed as delegated limits of authority, defined by hard, measurable thresholds. You tie these tolerances directly to your objectives or critical operations so everyone knows the exact mathematical speed limit they're driving under.
Look at how that same charity program defined their limits. It's perfectly done. Instead of just guessing, they set hard numbers. Staff satisfaction was baselined at 80%, and the absolute maximum drop they tolerate during the transition was just 5 points. And for compliance breaches, a hard zero-tolerance policy. If a decision even threatened to breach those specific numbers, boom, the brakes were instantly pulled. Now that is how you effectively measure risk.
But as you can imagine, setting these limits can cause some serious friction. Take a digital transformation program for a bank, for instance. A massive conflict popped up. The corporate mandate had a strict zero-tolerance policy for reputational damage around money laundering. But the program's entire goal was to innovate open-access banking, which inherently requires third parties to initiate payments. So the chief risk officer hit the brakes. It perfectly shows how a strict risk appetite can directly clash with a program's strategic innovation goals.
Finally, we reach part 5, the passengers, stakeholder engagement. These are the stakeholders navigating this journey right alongside us. And let me tell you, they require highly careful analysis and continuous management. Your program isn't happening in a vacuum. It's going to affect active supporters, aggressive blockers, people who stand to gain, people who just perceive a threat, even if there isn't a real one, and of course, the inherently indifferent. A really well-designed engagement strategy prioritizes converting those blockers, keeping your supporters loyal, and strategically turning the indifferent folks into active helpers.
The single most critical takeaway for engaging this complex network is that gathering feedback and genuinely listening is just as important as firing off your weekly status reports. Stakeholder engagement has to be a two-way dialogue. If you're just broadcasting messages into the void without listening to the friction on the ground, you are essentially flying blind. By plotting your stakeholders on an influence and interest matrix, you get this amazing, immediate visual snapshot of exactly where to focus your resources. Think about it. Someone with high power and high interest, you must manage them incredibly closely and collaborate daily. But someone with high power and low interest, you really just need to keep them satisfied and informed so they don't unexpectedly turn into a massive blocker. It's all about maximizing the impact of your communication. And remember, stakeholders are not isolated islands. As the National Rail Program example from our sources shows, relationships form really complex webs. Engaging just one single change director can ripple out heavily. Like that director influences a lobbying group, who then influences a politician, who ultimately influences Parliament's decision on your entire program's funding. You're managing a whole interconnected network, not just individual people. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take a hard look at your own organizational structures. Look at your blueprints, your boards, and your drivers. Ask yourself, is your governance truly empowering your leaders to drive the journey forward, or are undefined roles and vague risk limits leaving you stranded on the side of the road, just constantly reacting to the chaos? Get your organizational structure right, and you don't just survive the journey, you build an absolutely unstoppable engine of success.